The phone rang at 2:47 in the morning. I stared at the screen, my heart already pounding before I even saw the name. Linda, my ex-wife. We hadn't spoken in 3 years, not since the divorce was finalized. And now she was calling in the middle of the night. I almost didn't answer. My hand hovered over the decline button, but some instinct I couldn't explain, made me swipe to accept. Linda? The scream that came through the phone made my blood turn to ice. Richard? Oh, God, Richard, you were right. You were right about everything. Her voice was raw, terrified, broken in a way I'd never heard before, not even during our worst fights, not even when I'd told her I wanted a divorce. Linda, what's happening? Where are you? The house. I'm at the house. Our old house. Richard, please, you have to believe me now. Marcus, oh God, I found there's... Her voice dissolved into sobs so violent I could barely make out words. Marcus. Of course it was about Marcus. My replacement. The man she'd left me for. The man I'd warned her about. The man she called me paranoid and controlling for questioning. And now, 3 years later, she was screaming my name at 3 in the morning, telling me I was right. Linda, calm down. Take a breath. Tell me what happened. I can't breathe. There's so much. The police are coming, but I needed to call you first because you tried to tell me, and I didn't listen, and now I don't know what's real anymore. The police? Linda, what did Marcus do? A long, shuddering breath. Then, in a whisper that somehow felt louder than her screams, he's not who he said he was. None of it was real. Richard, our entire marriage. The line went dead. I sat there in my bed, phone still pressed in my ear, my mind racing. Then I was moving, throwing on clothes, grabbing my keys. I didn't know what I was walking into, but Linda, my Linda, the woman I'd spent 18 years of my life with, was in trouble. And despite everything, despite the divorce, despite the pain, I was a person she called. My name is Richard Castellano. I'm 58 years old, and I've been a criminal defense attorney in Seattle for the past 32 years. I've seen the worst of humanity walk through my office doors. I've defended murderers, thieves, con artists, and people who would make your skin crawl if you knew what they were capable of. I thought I'd seen everything. I thought nothing could surprise me anymore. I was wrong. This story, what I'm about to tell you, it still keeps me up at night. It still makes me question how well we really know the people we let into our lives. And it all started with that phone call at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in October, exactly 3 years after my divorce from Linda was finalized. Let me back up. Linda and I met in college. University of Washington, 1987. I was pre-law. She was studying interior design. We got married in 1991, right after I passed the bar exam. For 18 years, we had what I thought was a solid marriage. Not perfect, no marriage is, but solid. We didn't have kids. Linda had endometriosis, and after years of trying and several failed IVF attempts, we'd made peace with it being just the two of us. We had a beautiful craftsman house in Queen, and successful careers, good friends, a life. Then, in 2019, everything fell apart. Linda told me she'd met someone. His name was Marcus Reinhardt. He was 42, a real estate developer, recently divorced himself. They'd met at a charity gala for the Seattle Art Museum. She said he made her feel alive again in a way she hadn't felt in years. She said she was sorry, but she wanted a divorce. I was devastated, angry, confused, but I'm a lawyer. I know how to compartmentalize. I agreed to the divorce. We split everything 50-50ths. She got to keep the house. I moved into a condo downtown. It was civil, as far as divorces go. But then I started hearing things about Marcus. Little things at first. A colleague mentioned he'd represented someone in a lawsuit against one of Marcus's development companies. The suit alleged fraud, misrepresentation of property values. It had been settled out of court with an NDA. Then another acquaintance mentioned Marcus had been married not once, but 3 times before Linda. 3 divorces, all within the span of 10 years. That seemed odd. I started digging. Not because I wanted Linda back. At that point, The marriage was over, but because something felt wrong. What I found made my stomach turn. Marcus Reinhardt's background didn't quite add up. His real estate development company had only been registered for 5 years. Before that, there was almost nothing. No employment history, no paper trail, like he'd appear out of thin air in 2014. His previous marriages? The timelines were strange. First marriage, 2008 to 2010. Second marriage, 2011 to 2014. Third marriage, 2015 to 2018. Each one ended in divorce, and in at least 2 of those cases, the ex-wives have filed restraining orders that were later dropped. I tried to talk to Linda about it. That conversation did not go well. Richard, you're doing this because you're jealous. Marcus is a good man. He treats me better than you ever did. Linda, I'm not jealous. I'm concerned. His background is fine. He's been open with me about his past. He's been through difficult divorces, just like we're going through now. That doesn't make him a bad person. 3 restraining orders, Linda. 3. Which were all dropped because the accusations were false. God, Richard, I knew you'd do this. I knew you couldn't just let me be happy. That was the last real conversation we had. The divorce was finalized a month later. Linda married Marcus 6 months after that. I heard through mutual friends that they were happy. That Marcus had sold his properties and bought Linda her dream car, a vintage Mercedes. That they were traveling, living the life she'd always wanted. I tried to be happy for her. I really did. I dated. I threw myself into work. I tried to move on. But I never stopped thinking about those restraining orders, about the gaps in Marcus's history, about the feeling in my gut that something was very, very wrong. And now, 3 years later, Linda was screaming into the phone at 3 a.m., telling me I was right. I drove to Queen and breaking probably a dozen traffic laws. The house, our old house, was lit up like a Christmas tree. Every light was on. There were 2 police cars in the driveway, their lights flashing red and blue against the Craftsman facade. I parked on the street and approached cautiously. An officer stopped me at the front door. Sir, this is an active scene. I'm going to need you to step back. My name is Richard Castellano. The woman who lives here, Linda Reinhardt, she called me. I'm her. I hesitated. I'm her ex-husband. She asked me to come. The officer looked skeptical, but before he could respond, I heard Linda's voice from inside. Richard? Is that Richard? She appeared in the doorway, and I barely recognized her. Linda had always been put together, even during our worst arguments. Even on the days she told me she wanted a divorce, she'd been composed. This woman looked like she'd been through a war. Her hair was wild. Her eyes were red and swollen. She was wearing a bathrobe. And her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the blanket someone had wrapped around her shoulders. Linda. I moved past the officer. She collapsed into me, sobbing. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You tried to tell me, and I didn't listen. It's okay. I'm here now. What happened? She pulled back, looking at me with eyes that held a terror I'd only seen in my clients, the ones who were genuinely innocent and genuinely afraid. I found his room, Richard. The room he said was his office. He always kept it locked, said it was for client confidentiality. But tonight, he left his keys on the counter, and I just wanted to see what was so important. I thought maybe he was planning a surprise for our anniversary. Her voice broke. It wasn't a surprise. A detective approached us. Older guy, maybe early 60s, with tired eyes that said he'd seen too much. Mrs. Reinhardt, I'm Detective James Kowalski. I need to ask you a few more questions. This is Richard, Linda said, not letting go of my arm. My ex-husband. He's a lawyer. I want him here. Kowalski looked at me. Criminal defense? Yes. Then you might want to hear this too. He led us into the living room. The house looked the same as I remembered, but everything felt wrong. Kowalski had a notebook out. Mrs. Reinhardt, I need you to walk me through exactly what you found in that room. Linda took a shuddering breath. I unlocked the door. It was just an office at first. Desk, computer, filing cabinets. Normal. But then I saw the filing cabinet was unlocked. I opened it. She paused, her grip on my arm tightening. There were files. So many files, labeled with women's names. I didn't recognize most of them, but then I saw one that said Linda Campbell. Linda Campbell. Her maiden name. I opened it. There were photographs of me from before I met Marcus. Printouts of my social media from years ago. Financial records, medical records. I don't know how he got them. There was a document, like a dossier. It had everything about me. My job history, my marriage to Richard, our failed IVF attempts, my net worth. My blood ran cold. Linda, there were other files, she continued, her voice hollow. Michelle Torres, Sarah Chun, Deborah Matthews. I opened them. They all look like mine. Complete backgrounds on these women. Their marriages, their divorces, their financial information. And Richard, she looked at me, tears streaming down her face. The photographs. In the back of the filing cabinet. There were photographs of all of them with Marcus. Wedding photos. Michelle Torres was his first wife. Sarah Chun was his second. Deborah Matthews was his third. The room spun. He kept files on his ex-wives. Not just ex-wives, Detective Kowalski said. We've been through the room. There are 12 files total. Mrs. Reinhardt and the 3 previous wives. That's 4. The other 8 are women we're still identifying. But based on the contents, they appear to be potential targets. Targets for what? I asked, though I was starting to understand. We're still piecing that together, Kowalski said. But based on what we're seeing, Mr. Marcus Reinhardt, if that's even his real name, appears to have been running a long-term romance fraud scheme. He targets divorced women with assets, usually in their 40s or 50s, builds a relationship, marries them, and then systematically drains their finances before moving on to the next victim. Linda made it sound like she'd been punched. But we've been married for 3 years. He hasn't taken anything from me. We have joint accounts, but he's put money in, not taken it out. Kowalski and I exchanged a look. I knew what he was thinking, because I was thinking the same thing. Linda, I said gently, when was the last time you actually checked your accounts? All of them. She blinked. I don't know. Marcus handles most of the finances. He said it was easier that way, since he deals with money for his business anyway. But I have access. I could check anytime. But you haven't. No. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands. I watched her face as she logged into her banking app. The color drained from her cheeks. No. What is it? My savings account. The one I had from before we got married. The one with my inheritance from my parents. It had $340,000 in it. It's empty. It says the last withdrawal was yesterday. All of it. He transferred all of it. She looked up at me, devastated. He was leaving, wasn't he? He was going to take everything and disappear, and I would have never known until it was too late. Where is Marcus now? I asked Kowalski. We don't know. Mrs. Reinhardt came home around 11 p.m. He wasn't here. She assumed he was working late. When she discovered the room, she called us immediately at around 2:30 a.m. We've been here for about 20 minutes. We put out a bolo, but he's had a 3-hour head start minimum. 3 hours. In 3 hours, you can be anywhere. On a plane to another country. In another state. Gone. The other women. I said, his ex-wives. Did he do the same thing to them? Kowalski flipped through his notebook. We're reaching out to them now. Based on the divorce records, each marriage lasted 2 to 3 years. Each ended with the wife receiving minimal assets despite having brought significant wealth into marriage. But here's the thing, none of them reported him for fraud. The divorces were all settled quietly. Because he probably threatened them, I said, or he had something on them. Something that made it easier to just walk away than to fight. Linda was staring at her phone, tears falling silently. $340,000. That was my parents' money. They saved their entire lives. They left it to me, and I I just let him. You didn't know. I said firmly, Linda, this is not your fault. This is what con artists do. They're professionals. Richard, you tried to warn me. You told me something was wrong with him, and I called you paranoid. I called you controlling. And now, stop. We're not doing this now. Right now, we need to figure out where he is and how to get your money back. Kowalski cleared his throat. Mr. Castellano, I appreciate that you're trying to help, but this is a criminal investigation now. We'll handle tracking down Mr. Reinhardt. And what about the money? I asked. If he's been moving funds, there might be a trail. But these things take time. Weeks, sometimes months. And if he's moved the money offshore, Kowalski trailed off, but we all knew what he wasn't saying. If Marcus had moved the money offshore, Linda might never see it again. I'm going to be sick, Linda said suddenly and ran for the bathroom. I started to follow, but Kowalski stopped me. Mr. Castellano, can I ask you something? Sure. You looked into Marcus Reinhardt before. Your ex-wife mentioned you tried to warn her about him. What exactly did you find? I told him everything. The gaps in Marcus's employment history, the 3 previous marriages, the restraining orders that had been filed and dropped, the lawsuit that had been settled with an NDA. Do you still have that research? Kowalski asked. Some of it. I can get you the rest. Please do, because I think Mr. Reinhardt has been doing this for a lot longer than 4 marriages. I think what we found in that office is just the tip of the iceberg. The next few hours were a blur. More officers arrived. A forensics team went through Marcus's office, photographing everything, bagging evidence. Linda gave her statement multiple times. I called my office and cleared my schedule for the day. By the time the sun came up, we had a clearer picture, and it was even worse than we thought. Marcus Reinhardt wasn't his real name. His fingerprints, which the police had pulled from items in the house, matched a man named Michael Brennan, who had warrants in 3 different states for fraud, identity theft, and theft by deception. Michael Brennan, real name possibly something else entirely, had been running romance scams for at least 15 years. The 4 marriages to Linda and the 3 previous wives, those were just illegal marriages. The other 8 files in the office, those were women he'd conned without marrying them. Women who thought they were in relationships with a successful businessman named Marcus or Daniel or Christopher or whatever name he was using at the time. Women who'd loaned him money or invested in his fake business ventures or given him access to their accounts. Women who'd been left financially and emotionally devastated when he disappeared. The total? Over $2 million. Stolen from 12 women over 15 years. Linda sat in our old living room, wrapped in a blanket, staring at nothing. How did I not see it? She whispered. How did I live with him for 3 years and not know? I sat down next to her. Because you're not a con artist. You're a good person who assumes other people are good too. That's not a weakness, Linda. It feels like one. Detective Kowalski approached us again. Mrs. Reinhardt, Mr. Castellano. We've tracked Marcus's or Michael's credit cards. He used one at a gas station in Portland at 4 a.m. We've alerted Oregon State Police. Portland, for hours away. He was running. Will you catch him? Linda asked. We're doing everything we can, Kowalski said. But I want to be honest with you. Men like this, they're good at disappearing. He might have multiple identities, multiple escape routes planned. But we're going to try. Linda nodded numbly. After Kowalski walked away, she turned to me. I'm sorry. For what? For not listening to you. For thinking you were just a jealous ex-husband. For... Linda, stop. You don't owe me an apology. Yes, I do. You tried to protect me, even after I'd hurt you, and I threw it back in your face. I took her hand. You didn't hurt me. We grew apart. It happens. And yeah, I didn't like Marcus, but that was because my gut told me something was wrong. Not because I wanted you back. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. Do you think they'll find him? I don't know, but I'm going to do everything I can to help. And I did. Over the next few days, I became obsessed. I pulled every string I had. I contacted FBI agents I'd worked with over the years. I reached out to financial investigators. I tracked down two of Marcus's ex-wives, Michelle Torres and Sarah Chun. Their stories were identical to Linda's. Whirlwind romance, quick marriage, gradual financial control. Then one day, they woke up and he was gone, along with their savings. Michelle had lost $180,000. Sarah had lost $220,000. Both had been too ashamed to report it, too embarrassed that they'd been fooled. He made me feel like it was my fault, Michelle told me over the phone, like I'd been irresponsible with the money. It took me 2 years to realize I'd been conned. We found 5 of the other 8 women from the files. Their stories varied, but the pattern was the same. Marcus, or whatever name he'd use, would sweep into their lives, make them feel special, gain their trust, and then take their money. The total kept climbing. 2.3 million, 2.5 million, 2.8 million. And then, a week after Linda's 3 a.m. phone call, we got a break. Marcus had been spotted at a hotel in Sacramento. Local police moved in, but by the time they got there, he was gone. But he'd left something behind. A laptop. The laptop was a gold mine. Financial records showing offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, the Philippines, and Panama. Email exchanges with other scammers, discussing tactics and targets. And a document, a spreadsheet, titled Pipeline, with the names of 23 women. Linda's name had been marked as complete. 12 other names were marked as in progress. 10 were marked as potential. He'd been planning his next moves. While married to Linda, while living in our old house, he'd been actively cultivating relationships with a dozen other women. Some of them had no idea they were targets. Others, he'd already started the process with. Coffee dates, compliments, building trust. The FBI took over the case. With evidence of interstate fraud and money laundering, this was now a federal matter. Special Agent Diana Martinez was assigned as the lead. Mr. Castellano, she told me during one of our meetings, I've been doing this for 16 years. I've seen romance scammers, Ponzi schemers, every kind of con artist you can imagine. This guy, he's one of the most sophisticated I've ever seen. How so? Most romance scammers are opportunistic. They find a victim, they bleed them dry, they move on. But Marcus or Michael, or whoever he really is, he's methodical. He researches his targets for months before making contact. He builds elaborate false identities. He even pays taxes on his scam income to avoid IRS scrutiny. This is a career for him, and he's been doing it long enough to be really, really good at it. So what are our chances of catching him? Martinez hesitated. He's made mistakes. Leaving the laptop behind was huge, and he's getting sloppy. The fact that Linda found his office means he's overconfident. But Mr. Castellano, I need you to prepare Mrs. Reinhardt for the possibility that even if we catch him, she might never get her money back. These offshore accounts, they're nearly impossible to recover funds from. I nodded. I'd already explained this to Linda, but she was still holding out hope. The weeks turned into months. Marcus was spotted in Las Vegas, then in Miami, then in Houston. Each time, police moved in, and each time, he was gone before they arrived. It was like chasing a ghost. Linda moved out of the Queen Anne house. She couldn't stay there, not after everything. She moved into a small apartment in Ballard and started seeing a therapist. I checked in on her regularly, not as an ex-husband, not even really as a friend, just as someone who understood, in some small way, what she was going through. I keep thinking about all the signs I missed, she told me one evening over coffee. The way he always wanted to handle the finances. The way he'd get defensive if I asked about his past. The fact that he never wanted to meet my extended family. Always had an excuse. How did I not see it? Because he's a professional. Linda, this is what he does. He makes himself invisible until he's ready to take everything. I should have listened to you. You should have listened to your own instincts. I corrected. You told me once that something fell off about him early on, remember? But you talked yourself out of it because you wanted to be happy. She nodded slowly. I didn't want to be happy. After our divorce, I felt like such a failure. And then Marcus came along and made me feel desirable and special again. I think I ignored the red flags because I didn't want to be alone. You're not a failure, Linda. Our marriage didn't work out, but that doesn't mean you failed. It just means we weren't right for each other. She smiled sadly. When did you get so wise? I've had 3 years to think about it. Then, 4 months after that initial phone call, we got the call we've been waiting for. Marcus had been arrested, not by some dramatic FBI raid or police chase. He'd been pulled over for a broken taillight in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The officer had run his license, which came back as fake, and when they brought him in and fingerprinted him, everything lit up. Multiple warrants, multiple states, multiple names. Agent Martinez called me within an hour. We got him. I immediately called Linda. She cried. Not tears of joy exactly, but tears of relief, of validation, of the knowledge that this nightmare might finally be ending. The trial took another year. Marcus, whose real name we eventually learned was actually Marcus Brennan, he'd been using variations of his real name the whole time, was charged with 47 count of fraud, money laundering, identity theft, and theft by deception across multiple jurisdictions. I attended every day of the trial. So did Linda. So did Michelle, Sarah, and 4 of the other victims. We sat together in the gallery, a support group of women who'd all fallen for the same man's lies. The evidence was overwhelming. The laptop, the files, the financial records, testimony from 12 different victims, all telling variations of the same story. Marcus's defense attorney tried to argue that these were failed relationships, not crimes, that the women had willingly given him money and access to their accounts, that there was no proof of criminal intent. The jury didn't buy it. After 6 days of deliberation, they came back with a verdict, guilty on all 47 counts. The sentencing hearing was 3 months later. Each victim was allowed to give an impact statement. Michelle Torres went first. She talked about how she'd lost not just her money, but her ability to trust, how she'd been too ashamed to date for years afterward, how she still had nightmares about opening her bank account and seeing it empty. Sarah Chin talked about how she'd had to file for bankruptcy, how she'd lost her house, how her relationship with her family had been damaged because they'd tried to warn her and she hadn't listened. Linda went last. She stood at the podium, composed in a way I'd never seen before. Your Honor, she began, Marcus Brennan stole $340,000 from me. That was my parents' money. They were immigrants who worked their entire lives. My father is a janitor and my mother is a seamstress, to give me a better life. That money represented every sacrifice they ever made. And Marcus took it in an afternoon. She paused, looking directly at Marcus, who sat at the defense table, expressionless. But that's not the worst thing he took from me. He took my ability to trust my own judgment. He took 3 years of my life. He took my sense of safety. He made me feel like a fool. And he did it all while pretending to love me. Her voice broke slightly, but she continued. I want you to know, Marcus, that you didn't break me. You hurt me. You damaged me. But I'm still here. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure other women don't fall for men like you. She stepped down. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Patricia Thornton, looked at Marcus for a long moment. Mr. Brennan, in my 30 years on the bench, I have seen many types of criminals, violent criminals, drug dealers, murderers. But I find that the criminals I have the least sympathy for are people like you, people who weaponize trust, people who target vulnerable individuals and systematically destroy their lives for profit. She sentenced him to 28 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for at least 17 years. Marcus would be 59 years old before he was even eligible for parole. As the marshals led him away, he looked back at the gallery. His eyes swept over all of us, his victims, sitting together. For just a moment, I thought I saw something. Remorse? Regret? But then it was gone, and his face went blank again. After the sentencing, all of us, the victims, Agent Martinez, even Detective Kowalski, who'd driven down from Seattle, we all went out to dinner. It felt like closure. Not complete closure, because Linda never got her money back. The offshore accounts had been emptied before Marcus was arrested, The money moved through so many shell companies and cryptocurrency exchanges that it was untraceable. But it was something. How are you doing? I asked Linda as we stood outside the restaurant, preparing to say goodbye. I'm okay, she said. I mean, I'm not okay, but I will be. You will? I agreed. She looked at me for a long moment. Thank you, Richard, for believing me, for helping me, for not saying, I told you so. I would never. I know. That's one of the things I always loved about you. She hugged me, and for just a moment, it felt like old times. Not romantic, but comfortable, familiar, safe. Take care of yourself, Linda. You too. That was 6 months ago. Linda is doing better now. She's back to work. She's rebuilt her savings slowly, and she's even started dating again, carefully, very carefully. She joined a support group for fraud victims and has become an advocate, speaking at community centers about the warning signs of romance scams. Michelle and Sarah have become close friends of hers. The three of them, bonded by trauma, have created something positive out of their experiences. As for me, I went back to my life, my work, my routine, but I think about that night often, about the phone call at 2:47 a.m., about the terror in Linda's voice, about how close she came to losing everything. People ask me sometimes, clients mostly, how you can protect yourself from people like Marcus. And the truth is, there's no foolproof way. Con artists are called con artists for a reason. They're artists of confidence. They're professionals at making you trust them. But there are signs. If someone seems too perfect, they probably are. If someone wants to move too fast, slow down. If someone wants to control your finances or isolate you from friends and family, or makes you feel crazy for asking questions, those are massive red flags. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And if you're ever in a situation like Linda was, where you realize you've been conned, don't be ashamed. Report it. Talk about it. Because the shame is what allows men like Marcus Brennan to keep operating. The shame is what keeps their victims silent. I learned something from this whole experience. I learned that the divorce I thought was the worst thing that ever happened to me actually saved me from something worse. If Linda and I had still been married when she met Marcus, who knows what would have happened? I learned that sometimes love means letting go, even when it hurts. I learned that the instinct that made me dig into Marcus's background, the instinct Linda called paranoia, was actually just experience. Years of being a defense attorney, seeing the worst of humanity, taught me to recognize predators. And finally, I learned that Linda was stronger than either of us knew. She survived something that would have broken most people. She came out the other side and turned her pain into purpose. Last week, Linda called me. Not at 3 a.m. this time. At a reasonable hour on a Sunday afternoon. Richard, I hope I'm not bothering you. Never. What's up? I just wanted to thank you again. I know I've said it before, but I don't think I really conveyed how much it meant that you came that night. That you helped me through everything. You didn't have to. We were divorced. I treated you badly. But you came anyway. Of course I came, Linda. Just because we're not married doesn't mean I stopped caring about you. I know, and that's what I wanted to tell you. You're a good man, Richard. I didn't always appreciate that when we were together, but I see it now. Thank you. That means a lot. There's something else. I've been asked to speak at a conference next month about financial fraud and elder abuse, and I was wondering if you'd come with me, not as my ex-husband or my lawyer, but as a friend, because I think your perspective about noticing the warning signs and trusting your instincts would be valuable. I'd be honored. Great. I'll send you the details. There was a pause. Richard? We're going to be okay, aren't it? Both of us. I smiled. Yeah, Linda, we're going to be just fine. And you know what? We are. Life isn't perfect. I'm still single, still throwing myself into work, still living in my downtown condo. Linda is still rebuilding, still healing, still learning to trust again. But we're both here. We're both fighting. And Marcus Brennan is in a federal prison in Pennsylvania, where he'll stay for a very long time. Sometimes I think about what might have happened if I hadn't answered that phone call at 2:47 a.m., if I'd seen Linda's name and declined, if I'd decided that she'd made her bed and needed to lie in it. But I didn't. I answered. And maybe that's the real lesson here. When someone you once loved is in trouble, you help them. Not because you want something from them. Not because you expect anything in return. But because it's the right thing to do. Because we're all human. We all make mistakes. And we all deserve a second chance. My name is Richard Castellano. I'm 58 years old, and I'm a criminal defense attorney in Seattle. This is a story of how my ex-wife called me screaming from our old house, saying I was right about him all along. It's a story about deception, about trust, about the ways predators operate in plain sight. But more than that, it's a story about survival, about resilience, about the fact that even in our darkest moments, we're not alone. If you take nothing else from this story, take this. Trust your instincts, protect your assets, and never, ever be afraid to ask questions. And if someone you care about is in trouble, answer the phone, because you might be the only lifeline they have.